My name is Linda Phipps Sims.
And what is your date of birth?
July the 3rd, 1946.
And where were you born?
Prairie Grove, Arkansas at the Elizabeth Hospital.
And this interview is for the Farmington Oral History Project, and we want to be sure that we have your permission to reuse the interview.
Yes, you do.
Who were your parents?
Herschel and Irma Lee Cowan Phipps.
And tell me about your family. Who are your siblings?
I had two brothers, Lauren Phipps and Larry Phipps, and they live here in Savoy, or did.
Were they older or younger?
They were younger.
Tell me about where you lived growing up.
I lived in Savoy all my life. Just lived here on the mill pond, had a great childhood, always had people in my yard to play with, always people to swim with. Back then, when I was a child, the mill pond was open to the public, and we always had company.
Tell me about the mill pond. Who built it and when was it built?
It was built in the late 1800s, and it was built by, it was a grant.
It was a grant?
There was a grant. It was, I really don't know much about it. I've got it written down in some books, but it was a grant that was given for a feed mill. You know, they ground corn and wheat and stuff for the community or for the area.
Tell me what it was like living here along the Clear Creek.
Well, I had one of the best childhoods you could ever imagine. I'd get up in the morning, put my swimsuit on, and head to the creek. And sometimes Mom wouldn't even see us till supper time.
Tell me about your family's business.
My dad and my uncle and my grandfather, there was a mill here, American Milling Company. And in 1960, we had a flood and it burned. And so then they moved the business to town. And then in 1975, my dad passed away, and so they sold the business.
What was your part in the business growing up as a kid?
Just being a kid. I had no part in the business.
Tell me about your family routines. What would y'all do at home and how would you help?
Well, Mom would always, in the summertime when school was out, I had to wash windows. That was one of my jobs in the summertime. Most generally it was just staying out of her hair. You know, just going out and playing and just being a kid. And Dad was a traveler, and he always took us on a vacation. I went to the World's Fair and in Washington State. That was an exciting thing. Well, I was 14 when that happened. And but he just liked to travel and camp, and so those were our, you know, that's what we did.
Tell me what it was like going to school. Where'd you go to school and how'd you get there and what was it like?
I started school in Farmington when I was first grade, and I went there all through till completed through the 8th grade. And then my 9th and 10th grade, I went to University High School, and then I came back to Farmington and graduated, went there my junior and senior year.
How far was it for you to talk to me about the trip to school? How would you get to school?
On the bus. Rank Carney, that lived up the road here, he was our bus driver. And all the kids in the neighborhood gathered over at the store and would catch the bus, and we'd go to school. And it was probably about, at least a 30, 45-minute hour ride to school every day.
Tell me about some of your classmates.
My classmates were Wayne and Linda Brumley, Johnny Lossing, Gerald Tucker, Donnie Conduff. In fact, we had a small class reunion here in last month, and we got to get together with some of them. So we were a very close, very close class.
Tell me about some of your teachers.
Well, Miss Brown was my first grade teacher, and she was very strict. If she caught you counting on your fingers, you might get a swat with the ruler. Or she'd make you, sit on your hands so you couldn't count, but that didn't deter some of us. So, but anyway, she was very strict, very good teacher. Second grade was Mrs. Wiley, and that's where we learned to do cursive. And third grade was Mrs. Beckett. Fourth grade was Mrs. Kerr. Fifth grade was Mrs. Blue. Sixth grade was Mrs. Fowkes. And then after that, we went to junior high, and seventh and eighth grade, we just had a bunch of different teachers. So,
what were some of the sports that you were involved in Farmington?
well, they didn't have softball as a sport, but we used to play it during recess, and I loved softball. But basketball was my main thing. I loved to play basketball, and I played basketball my junior and senior year. And from then on, I was a guard, and that's when we played 3-on-3. We had, 3 on one end of the court, 3 guards and 3 forwards. And anyway, I loved it. I loved basketball.
Who was your coach? Tell me about your coach.
One of my coaches was Coach Beatty, and he was a good coach, and very kind of strict, I guess. But anyway, we had to run the bleachers in the old gym, and he kept us in shape.
Tell me about your earliest memories of Farmington.
Well, I guess I have all good memories of Farmington. I liked school. I liked, of course, riding the bus. That was, and back then, when I even got into high school, I rode the bus. Even as a senior, we rode the bus. Only time I got to drive the car was when I had ball practice after school. And but other than that, we rode the bus every day.
Tell me about the town. What was it like back then?
Small, and it seemed like there was a grocery store, the Whites, the Phipps grocery store. It was small. There wasn't near the stuff, the commercial business that it has now. It was just a very small town, and you knew everybody.
Tell me about some of the people that you remember from Farmington. People in the community.
Well, all my classmates, their parents, Johnny Lossing's parents, Gerald Tucker's parents, we were just a very close. Back then, there was only like 20, 22 people in our class, and everybody knew each other. All the parents knew each other, and they kept good track of you. So it was a lot different then than it is now.
What did kids do for fun back when you were growing up?
Well, be ornery. It was a different time because I didn't get to go to town and run around like they do now. Very seldom did I ever get the car to go in town when I started driving. just going to basketball games and just being involved that way. And here in the community, when I was a kid, we'd all get together and play kick the can and ante over, especially in the summer months when it was warm, or in the spring and fall. We were playing hide and seek, and I often wonder why or how in the world we kept from getting snake bit, because we were all over this place hiding in brush, under the mill, under the trucks, wherever, but we didn't.
What did the adults do for fun back when you were a kid? What would your parents and other adults in the community do for fun?
They'd get together and play cards. My dad loved to play pitch, and they would get together with his aunt and uncle, and Uncle Ben and Aunt Anna Phipps. They would get together and they would play cards at least one night a week. And my dad loved to dance, and so he would like to go to the Legion huts to dance, and Siloam, Lincoln, Prairie Grove, and that's what he liked to do. And as I got older, he would take me, and I liked it. So, but other than that, I mean, we were just out here 10 miles from town, so we just had to make our own entertainment, more or less. So, and TV, we had the first TV in Savoy.
Tell me about that. What was that like?
Well, it was exciting. I mean, when I'd get off the bus, I would run to the house to make sure I got the TV first, because I wanted to watch American Bandstand. And my brothers wanted to watch cartoons. So, and then we had some neighbors that had never seen TV before, so they'd come in. They liked to watch TV. But yeah, and then after we got our TV, then other people around in the community started getting their TV. But all we had was an antenna. And so we'd pick up some of the local stations, 5, and well, I guess mostly Tulsa stations. So, but it was exciting to get a TV. And it was black and white. Of course, no color. Until after I was married, there was no color TVs. So,
what about growing up here? Did you have electricity the whole time?
Yes, we did. As far as I can ever remember, we had electricity. Yeah, and but anyway, it was a quiet life.
Well, tell me about what you do after you graduated from high school. Kind of what was your...
Got married. I graduated in May, and I got married August 1st, 1964, and to Wayne Sims, and we were high school sweethearts, and we were married 52 plus years before he passed away in December the 30th, 2016.
And what about your kids?
I have 2 children. Kelly lives next door, and Kirk lives in Lowell, and they graduated from Farmington. And I was there for them. Kind of hesitated going to work at the school because they were in school, but they kind of liked it. They kind of liked Mom being there for the most part.
Tell me how you got involved working at the school, and then kind of walk me through all your different jobs over the years.
Well, Wayne and I had a business. We had bought Tipton's Garage up on 16, and we named it Wayne's, or we had a garage. And so we had that 2 years, and then Wayne did the bus repairs for Farmington schools. So the superintendent, Gilbert Bisher, wanted a mechanic that could teach mechanics and also take care of the buses at school. So he offered Wayne a job as a bus mechanic and a teacher. And so then I was offered a job for a library aide. And so that's how my job started at the school. I started in the new round building, we called it, as a library aide, and I did that for 1 year. Then the next year, they sent me over to the high school because I was the only aide they had, so they shifted me around. And I was a study hall person that kept study hall. And I don't know, then I went from there to, they shipped me back to the elementary to be a migrant aide or a Title I aide. And I did that for several years. And then I got the opportunity to become the high school secretary for Mr. Lynch. And so I took that job, and I did that for a few years, and then I became the athletic director secretary. And I did that for, I don't know, 14 years or more. And then I went over to the superintendent's office, and that's where I stayed as accounts payable or whatever they had for me to do. And I retired there in 2004. And then Pat Bond and I job shared the accounts payable job for 5 years, and then in 2009 we retired permanently.
Talk to me about working for Randall Lynch. How long did you work for him, and what did all
I worked for him a couple of years before he became superintendent, and he was a great boss. You know, Randy, he was just kind of slow, easy going, but anyway, he was great to get along with, and he treated me well. So. But I had some other superintendents that were not quite so good as he was. So, but
did you work for him when he was superintendent?
Not as his secretary, but I worked in the school system, but I wasn't his secretary. So, but
so did you work for Coach Holland when he was during the years they won the championships, or was that after that? Tell me about working for Coach.
Let's see. Coach Holland was a good boss. Of course, you know, he was always kind of gruff, but you just had to know how to work him. I would say he'll probably get a kick out of that if he hears this. But anyway, he was good to work for, and he knew what I could do and what I expected of him and what he expected of me. And so, but I had to keep all the athletic records, you know, and make sure that AAA was notified when we had a new kid come into a program or whatever. So I tried to do a good job.
Then next you said you went to work for the superintendent?
That was Michael Gray, I believe.
So tell me about the different superintendents you worked for over the years. When did you start in that office, and then what year did you retire? Who all did you work for?
I worked for, when I first went into the office, it was Michael Gray. And then there was Mr. Wright. And then we worked the superintendent now. I'm sorry. My mind just went blank.
Brian Law?
Brian Law, yes. They were all really good superintendents. And we just, they took care of us.
There's a drawing that you showed us earlier. Talk to me. Do you remember who did that?
I don't remember
Tell me
who.
what it says and kind of talk to me about
It just said, it shows a picture of a principal sitting at the desk, and somebody calls in and asks him a question and said, "You'll have to call back later and ask the secretary. She runs the show." And the secretary most generally knew what was going on for the most part.
Talk about some stories about whenever you pretty much had to make decisions that normally maybe a principal or superintendent, or how it was a busy place, and didn't you a lot of times just kind of handle business for them?
Mostly with kids, you know, or trying to call parents. Just if the principal was out, I mean, if you had a child that come in that was in trouble, you just had to sit them down. a lot of times I tried to talk to them, you know, try to give them a little advice, but most of the time they didn't take it. But anyway, I mean, there was a lot of, you know, you had to, a lot of book work. I kept the accounts, the club accounts. I had to take care of all that. I mean, from the time I got there, from the time I left, you were busy all day long, and the time passed quickly.
What stories or memories stand out over the years working at the school?
Well, I just remember it was a great place to work and be with my kids. And I often said, when my kids get out of school, I'm retiring. That was it. But it was just, I had good hours. I was home at 3:30, 4 every day. My kids were all involved in sports, and it gave me time to get home, get supper, get them off to their activities. I was involved in Booster Club, and with me being at school, I took care of the concession stand. You know, I'd go right after school, put out all the candy, get everything set up for that. There were a lot of advantages of working at the school, being close to my kids, being involved in different things. I mean, I wouldn't trade those years for nothing. So it was a great place to work.
How much did you make when you started off working there? Tell me, and then how did
Well,
it change over the years?
When I started to work, I cleared about $199 a month. But I didn't work for the money. More, you know, it was to supplement my husband's income, and it, you know, money went farther back then. But I enjoyed my job, and every year I'd get a little raise, you know, and from when I left, I was making decent money and had good benefits. I had sick days, I had vacation days. So I have no complaints. It was a great job, and plus I ended up with a good retirement. So it was a good place to work.
Who are some of the students that in your memories of the school stand out, maybe, that you dealt with?
Well, I had a lot of kids that were kids of people that I went to school with. And I don't know, Tammy Shelley was one of them, or more. I had her in study hall, and we used to talk, and I don't know, it was just, there's so many kids that you were involved with that you just, Scott Beeks, he was my office aides. You know, every year we'd have office aides that would help us run and get absentees and do this, and you get close to them, and I don't know, there were just so many. There were just a lot of kids, and my kids, you know, their friends, Jeff Oxford, Shelley Parsley, all those girls, Sherry Gardner, all those girls and guys, I mean, they were just like my kids. And so, and Sherry, when she sees this, she'll tell you, I made her, she had never missed a day of school. And so we had this plan that we were going to give her a big award when she graduated. And so guess what? Senior skip day came up. I wouldn't let her skip because that would have ruined the award that she would have got. She never missed a day of school in her whole 12 years. That was, to me, that was something else.
What about some of the teachers whose memories that really stand out? Who are some of the ones that really you got to know well?
Oh gosh, Jeanette Robbins. She was the best home ec teacher that you would ever find. I mean, and the girls all respected her. She taught them so much different than it is now. And I know that all the girls that had her just loved her. Jean Anna Sellers, she was a business teacher. she was a big influence on a lot of people. Oh gosh, Bob Eccles. And there were so many new teachers that come in that, you know, that you had to kind of take under your wing and lead them, you know, because especially the ones that were kind of around Coach Holland, he kind of, you know, they kind of were kind of scared of him, but, you know, he would intimidate them. But anyway, there were just so many of them. I just can't remember all of them, but they all treated me so well. And Miss McQuestion was there for years, and but anyway, they were all Emma Banks. You know, they were all just great teachers, and we all had a good time too. During the summertime, Miss McQuestion and Jean Ann Sellers and Jeanette, we'd all come out here. They'd all come out here, and we'd go swimming, and we'd spend some, you know, personal time together. But they had some great teachers.
What about some of the leadership of the school, some of the board members that you got to know over the years that were really involved in it?
Well, I think Gary Weeks was one of the board members. Gosh, I didn't really get acquainted with a lot of the board members till I started to work in the superintendent's office. And at the moment, I can't even think who they were. I know Jeff's on the school board now. But my mind just went blank, so.
Well, let's switch to the city for a little bit, and kind of, what are some of your memories of how the town went from being 2 or 3 stores and the post office to what it is now?
Oh.
Have you been surprised, and kind of what all
Yes,
do you remember about that?
I remember sitting in the high school. In fact, I was an aide, and looking across the field, across where IGA was and Sonic and all that. Remember thinking, it was that property was going to sell, and it was just a field. And then all of a sudden, you turn around, and then there's all these businesses that are, you know, that are there. And well, another thing I thought about, you know, was the taxation that the school was going to get. It was going to, you know, improve the money that the school was going to get too, with all the businesses that were coming into town. So every time a new business come into town, we'd get kind of excited about it. So,
speaking of school finances, when you were a kid, how well funded was the school?
Well, I know that every year, well, after I got out of elementary and got up into junior high, where I could, you know, kind of knew what was going on, there were a couple of years there that they just had to shut school down because they didn't have enough money to pay the teachers. So they just closed the doors, send us home. And that's when my mother decided that she was going to send us to Fayetteville to University High School, because that's where she graduated, and thought that we could get an education there. But then they closed my 10th grade, the end of my 10th grade year, and so I went back to Farmington, and I'm so glad that I got to go back to Farmington, because I got to play basketball, and that was my love, playing basketball. So I went back to Farmington my junior and senior year.
Didn't you at some point help coach talk about that?
When I was in elementary school, when I was an aide there, I was head of the Pee Wee basketball girls. And we had games, and of course back then it was, you know, we coached 3-on-3. I mean, it wasn't full court basketball like it is now, but I had a whole group of girls, and I had, I had aides that helped. But anyway, it was a good time. Took up Saturday morning, and that's when we had our games.
Is there anything that I haven't asked you about Farmington that you wouldn't want to tell me?
Well, I just remember, that I went around and I took pictures when they were going to tear down the old high school. And took pictures of all that, and I turned them over to the high school. I mean, they got them. I took pictures of that. There's just been so many changes through the years, and I was so lucky that I got to be a part of all that, all the growth, of most of the new buildings that are there now. I was there and was a part of. Now, I was Folsom Elementary. It was not there when I was there. I think they built that later, and the new high school. And so, but all the other buildings, I was there.
If you had to tell somebody who had never been to Farmington what Farmington is like, what would you tell them?
Well, it would be a great place to raise a family. It's not big like a lot of your big cities like Fayetteville. Most of the people you would get to know are, it's not like it was when I first started at the school. When I first started at the school, I knew everyone. I knew the kids, I knew the parents. And then as I went through the system and ended up in the superintendent's office, by the time I left, I hardly knew anyone. The growth had really, there was a lot of kids and a lot of newcomers come into the town. And, and that's what they wanted was the small town atmosphere. And, but it's growing. And I don't know if that's good or bad.
Complete this sentence. My favorite thing about Farmington is
the people. The people. I feel like there's still a lot of people there that I knew have grown up there and stayed there. And I just feel like that they just have made a difference in the city. It's just a great little town. That's about all I can tell you. I've seen a lot of growth from the time I started to school there till the time I left.
Over the years, what kind of ways did the school and the city work together, if any?
Well, they were so close there for a while. City Hall was just down, right there practically in the same parking lot as the high school. I really can't say that. I know they did work well together, but I can't really tell you exactly how they did that, in what capacity. But I know the city was, if there was anything that we needed, or they were very dependable, but that's about all I can tell you.
Do you remember the years when they used to do the annual festival or the annual event there in town? Were you?
I do. I remember that. I think that was the year that Bobby Carlisle was mayor, and I remember it being so hot. Let me see, was that the year they had Mickey Gilley? Or some star came in, and my friend Rita Swopes, and I remember going to her house and just kind of crashing because it was so hot, and because we were all involved in that, helping and stuff. So, but yeah, I remember that. So,
One of the other annual events they always do in town is the Fireman's Breakfast. Did you ever go to any of those?
Never. I've been to them, but I never was involved in it because I was out here. Weddington Fire Department's really our fire department out here, but I have gone to their breakfasts.
How big an event is that in the town? Seems like a lot of people come.
The one in Farmington, yeah, it's a very big deal. Yeah, a lot of people can go to that and participate, but that's how they make. I mean, I guess that's one of their main fundraisers for the year is the pancake breakfast.
How important is a volunteer fire department to a community?
Very important. But it makes your insurance rates go down. The Weddington Fire Department around here is very involved with the community, and we have a substation here in Savoy that they, if something happened, I mean, they're right here. And I know that's how Farmington is, because, I mean, that fire department is very important to that city. And, so it's, they're just an important thing to have, especially for your insurance.
Anything else you can think of about Farmington or the school you want to share?
No, other than the fact that I just so thankful that I had the opportunity to work at the school.